Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're out here in the back 40 today. Wanted to spend some time, talk with folks about some pressing issues that are going on in the reptile community. And also, we need to have a bit of a discussion about USARK, what they actually do, what their job is, and what our job is as reptile keepers in order to help ensure that we can continue to keep these animals and to keep putting them in the best public light. So there's going to be a lot of different opinions about some things. We're going to talk about some of them today, and really encourage everybody, get down, participate in the comments and so forth, because this isn't one of those things where it's, you know, me dictating how things should be. It's something where the whole community needs to come together and agree on things based on a common sense assessment of what we do. So you won't want to go anywhere. Really encourage participation in this one. Really want everybody to get it out and share it, because last I saw there was like 1.8 million reptile keepers in the country. It's probably a conservative estimate, but there's a lot of bad laws that are coming down the pike too that we've always got to be vigilant about keeping, and some of this stuff we have to admit we bring it on ourselves. So you won't want to go anywhere. Got a really important topic today. We'll be right back on Intrepid Exotics. Whether you're a lifelong keeper or just getting started, help us encourage responsible keeping, conservation, and public education in the interest of keeping our reptiles safe and healthy as we protect them for future generations. You're invited to spend time with us as we experience these awesome animals together on Intrepid Exotics. Few things make me happier than a good cup of coffee. So guys, there's a lot of opinions, some good, some bad, about USARK. And I think we really need to dive in a little bit, look at some of these, and get everybody realistic expectations about what we should see from them and what we should see from each other. For those of you that may not be familiar with USARK, or know the name, know the concept, and aren't really sure about how it works, just a really quick rundown here. USARK's a nonprofit, and it's run by a really small group of people. And what they do is they watchdog legislation as it's being proposed in all 50 states, and they work to catch bad laws or very restrictive laws and things like that are going to impact our ability to keep and educate people about our animals. You know, they don't, although they're involved in these things, they're not strictly an educational facility or organization or anything. They've got a real specific job, and it's a big job. For any of you guys that's ever read through any legislation, it really can be a nightmare. And there's a lot of really smart, really sneaky politicians out there, and there's a lot of special interests out there that utilize those politicians in order to get their interests addressed and passed. And one of those interests just happens to be, there's some groups out there that don't think animals should be kept as pets, period. There's some people out there that are really against reptiles as pets. So, you know, we're a minority of the population. You know, even if we've got 2 million reptile keepers in the country, there's still 330 million people out there. A big percentage of those are freaked out by our animals. You know, people are naturally afraid of snakes and spiders and, you know, things like that. So we've really got an uphill battle. We're constantly trying to push the rock up the hill with this. Now, we have some folks that, you know, talk about, well, I don't want to support USARK because I don't know where their money goes and things like that. And I think that excuse is really just for lack of trying, if I'm being honest about it. You know, you go to the website. I've got it down in the description of this video, as with all the other ones. Go down there, you can pull up tax returns from 2008 to 2022 right now. And it shows what they claimed on their taxes, what their income was, what their expenditures were. And yes, you're not going to be able to go in there and figure out what every $100 went to and things like that. But there's a couple things that you have to take into consideration when you're talking about a nonprofit. I've worked for them before when I was younger. And we would go out and we would generate letters to the state legislature about issues regarding the utility companies, about issues regarding home health care and things of that nature. Stuff that had a really big impact on a lot of people and made our job real easy. And people understood that when you're working for a nonprofit, it's still work. You still have to get paid for the work that you're doing. You know, unless you're going to have a whole crew of people who are independently wealthy and can devote 40, 60, 80 hours a week to doing this kind of work, you've got to pay people to do it. So, of course, the president's going to draw a salary. There's a lot of people that are volunteering. There's a lot of expenses. When you talk about, you know, what we need to do as far as going on in the state legislature, USARK has to hire lawyers. They have to hire lobbyists. And I think the last number I heard was $150,000 a year for a lobbyist that they keep on. And I'm going to venture to guess that that's a low number in most businesses. So there are a lot of expenses when we're talking about that. And I think in 2022 they claimed a total of like $1 million. And it seems like a lot of money to you and me, but when you're talking about monitoring all 50 states and being involved in legislation, that money is going to get burnt through so quick. So I think the folks that are skeptical about where the money goes, all this other stuff, the conspiratorially minded people, you know, you may do yourself a little bit of justice by kind of lightening up a little bit and just understanding that in order to do these things, it takes resources. Nothing's going to be perfect, and anybody that holds anybody to the standard of being perfect needs to do some self-introspection anyway, because none of us are perfect. So hopefully, you know, some of you folks that may be a little skeptical about it, go in, do a little bit more research, talk with some more people and things like that, because it is an important organization that we all got to get behind. Now, saying that, what does USARK not do? USARK puts out fires. As they come up in the state houses, they find them, they put them out. What they don't do is they can't prevent the reptile community from starting more fires. And what I mean by that is that there's quite often when we see a piece of legislation, particularly on a city level, county level, things like that, a lot of times when a piece of legislation comes through, it's in response to something that one of us in the reptile community did wrong. Perfect example of that is a couple years ago when the kid let the cobra loose, didn't report it for a couple months. Now everybody's up in arms, everybody's scared to death because there's a cobra running through the neighborhood. Now, go to some place like India, they're as common as possums. But out here, it's going to freak a lot of people out. In response to that, we spent a whole lot of time dealing with the city council and everything out in Raleigh as they're proposing these different bans and things like that. And it just turns into this huge quagmire that it makes the job of USARK of ensuring that there's, you know, fair guidelines and things like that for us that much more difficult when we do stupid things like that. Now, on that topic, as a community, we've got a responsibility, both as keepers, if you've got any kind of a social media presence, if you're a breeder, if you're, you know, going on like I'm doing and putting out YouTube videos and things like that, we've got an obligation to put the entire hobby, business, genre of reptile keeping in the best light that we can. And there's a couple things that I've heard addressed by other people in a recent question that I put out that I was going to mention anyway. But one of the biggest examples of this is doing a lot of over dramatized posts on social media, putting out videos and things like that that are really grisly and gruesome because they get a lot of attention, and you know, using that to your own benefit, and all of that stuff really is detrimental to the hobby in general. You know, this is all the ammunition that those people use to, you know, back up their proposals that reptile keepers are cruel, they're inhumane, they're weird, they don't need to be keeping these animals. This is nothing but an inhumane practice across the board. And, you know, unfortunately, we can get online and we can find enough material to back up that claim and make a really good case for it. That being said, you can also get online and find enough information to make a really good case for a flat earth. Doesn't mean that it's true. And it's the same thing with this. So, you know, one of the things that I heard somebody say was, you know, I'd really like to see USARK do more stuff with handling and care guidelines and, you know, safe handling, responsible handling and stuff like that. And, you know, if you go on the website, they do have their list of concerns, you know, wanting to make sure that the reptile industry is not completely unregulated, but that the regulations that are imposed are fair and reasonable. And, you know, it goes down a list. And I've also seen one thing, I mean, it was a pet topic for me when I first started my channel here last year, and that was live feeding. And, you know, fortunately, I've seen more people kind of starting to get on and mention it because, you know, as you're a creator for a YouTube channel, you don't want to intentionally piss people off. You don't want to chase off potential viewers and subscribers and all that other stuff. But there comes a point in time where your integrity has to come in and draw a line somewhere. And for me, personally, I find anything having to do with animals, our very first concern should be ethical and humane, and being ethical and humane. And in my personal opinion, torturing an animal by throwing it into an enclosure with a predator is not the most ethical, and it's not the most humane approach. You know, there's going to be arguments about, you know, you've got to feed live sometimes if your animal's starving itself to death because it refuses to eat anything that's pre-killed. And those are the exception rather than the rule, you know. And even when you do find people that, you know, have to throw live pinkies and things like that in, it's not something that they broadcast, because although an advanced keeper may understand that, a layman doesn't. And a layman is going to draw their inferences from what they see people doing. It bumps it up another level. If you're talking about adult mice, adult rats, rabbits, things like that, you know, those are all animals that people keep as pets. You know, little girl has a pet rabbit, she's flipping through there and she sees a rabbit and a snake. Ooh, what's this? And she watches a rabbit getting tortured and squealing and kicking and fighting for its life. That's not something that, my personal opinion, is not something we need to do anyway. You know, for a myriad of reasons. I've made whole videos on it. You know, live prey can hurt your animal. And not just that, it's inhumane. It really is. You know, the argument, as soon as we bring an animal into captivity, that argument of it happens in the wild is completely out the window, and it's a moot point. Okay? We keep dogs. You don't see people throwing live prey to their dogs, although wild dogs will chase and consume live prey, you know. So that's one of the things that, I mean, honestly, it may get you more attention. It's getting you the wrong attention from the wrong kind of people. And anybody that gets a kick out of watching an animal suffer is not anybody that I want to be associated with at any level, you know. And some people may say, yeah, well, you're just a tree-hugging hippie, or, you know, you're a snowflake, or whatever the case may be. Well, you can say that. I've got 2 combat tours that would probably disagree with that statement. And I've also worked more homicide and accident scenes than anybody that I can think of right off the top of my head. So I'm not squeamish. You know, this isn't something that I see and it just makes me cringe because I'm so soft. It's because I've got a very deliberate sense of right and wrong. And if we're talking about, you know, the well-being of sentient creatures, we're talking about suffering, you know, I think it's our responsibility to minimize suffering as much as we can. And by humanely euthanizing our prey, we're doing that, we're minimizing suffering, and we're minimizing the risk of suffering by the prey item hurting our animals, and we're also putting ourselves in a much better light as being a more humane community. So, without beating that up too much, take it for what it's worth. Honestly, if you get a kick out of seeing an animal suffer, you've got issues. You know, there might be a good opportunity to maybe talk to a therapist or something, because it's not cool. And, you know, good people who have these other animals as pets, they don't see it as cool either. It's not worth the extra 20, 50,000 clicks or likes or whatever it is. Don't do it. Don't put it out there. I mean, if you are going to do something, don't throw it out there for the world to see. You know, if you've got to do a live feeding to keep an animal alive, do it. Don't broadcast it. And, you know, some people even go so far as to say that, you know, any feeding at all shouldn't be shown. You know, my opinion is starting to turn on that a little bit, because I've got a couple of videos out there where I've, you know, shown myself feeding all my animals and stuff like that. I know a lot of us do, but that's something too that I'm going to curb. And I really don't plan on putting anything else out there of my animals eating, you know. Since there's really no harm, no suffering or anything involved in it, feeding somebody a frozen thawed animal, I personally don't think it's a big deal. But there again, it's something that may offend somebody else outside the community, put me in a bad light with them, and I just don't want to do that. So, you know, I'm probably not even going to post any more feeding videos. You know, it is what it is. You know, and another thing with the bite videos and stuff, you know, going out, and my 16-foot snake got a hold of me. Look at all the blood. You know, my monitor lizard just ripped me up. Look at all the blood. It doesn't put us in a good light, guys. It just doesn't. You know, it might make you look like a tough guy, like you've been ripped up by a snake. I've been ripped up by a snake. I've been ripped up by a monitor lizard. You know, I've made mention to it and things like that when I'm talking about safe handling, when I'm talking about things that we need to, you know, what we need to be prepared to deal with, worst case scenario. But that makes our animals look dangerous, you know, and it's all going to be fun and games until this stuff comes down to where now there's laws being passed where you can't legally keep your animals. Okay, now you got to find something else to stand up your self-esteem. Okay, problem is the rest of us are going to end up losing the animals that we really love working with, that aren't the stone cold killers that some people present them to be. So that's another problem. This is all stuff that the community needs to do amongst ourselves. It's something that, you know, Phil Goss and USARK and no amount of USARK videos can keep in check. This is something that us as a community need to police our own. You know, don't be afraid. If you see somebody posting a live feeding video or something, you don't have to be a jerk about it. Say, hey, you know, this really isn't cool, man. It's not putting a hobby in a good light. We've all seen this before. You know, you really should stop this. And, you know, you're going to get different reactions to that. You know, I've had people that I've run into that have pulled down all of their live feeding videos, you know, after having a conversation about it. And then I've had other people tell me to go piss up a rope. You know, I don't care. Your opinion's your opinion. Well, you know, my opinion is based on the reality of the situation. So there's a lot of other people whose opinions bear into this that we need to make our overall decision off of. So the USARK can't do that stuff. That's the stuff that we've got to do. You know, I mean, just in the short, like I said, I started this channel last October. Not the last October, just over a year ago. And, you know, I've seen since then the number of live feeding videos and the number of really, you know, dramatic stuff kind of start to subside a little bit since then, which is really good. And it gives me a lot of hope that, you know, we may actually be in a position to kind of police our own and you know, work together to keeping in a good light to everybody. So, you know, I'm kind of optimistic from that perspective. But you can't be afraid to hurt somebody's feelings. You know, there comes a point in time where you've got to draw the line between right and wrong, and just have the integrity and the courage to stand up and stand on that line and say, this is as far as I go. You're gonna hurt somebody's feelings. My personal honor is more important to me than most people's feelings. So I think most people probably feel the same way. Now, so there's a couple things I do want to touch on really quick. A couple alerts that came out from USARK. I think one of them's from the state of Washington, and the other one's from New Mexico. And excuse me. But it looks like now there's proposals on the table to ban any kind of educational events with animals. And this concerns me. If of everything that I've seen, I can almost understand the knee-jerk wanting to ban animals when somebody does something stupid, but this is going the next tier down on us. And when we start talking about banning educational events with these animals, now we've got a problem, because our biggest tool in order to help maintain our rights to keep these animals is education. Okay, we did one last year, a public education event where it was in an environment that was not a reptile show. It was just a little festival that was going on, and it was all non-reptile people out there, but we had our animals out there, and people were getting exposed to them. They were seeing them up close, firsthand, some of them for the first time. It was a really awesome experience, and I'm working on doing some more of that stuff this year. It's really important that, you know, us as reptile keepers work to kind of break the mythology around our animals, and let people know that they're all man-eating monsters and things like that. That's how we're going to really build ourselves a foundation to be able to fight bad reptile laws. When people, you know, in a place like Minnesota or Michigan or something like that, where say a reticulated python could not survive at all, and there's no environmental concerns whatsoever for keeping these animals, and they want to ban them because people are afraid of them. How do we do that? How do we fix it? Educational programs. And that ties into some responsibilities of breeders too, that we'll hit in a second. But if they get to the point where they can start passing legislation to ban educational events with reptiles, that takes a huge tool away from us as keepers to educate the public, you know, and the stuff is just going to snowball. You know, part of me, being a strategically thinking person, is almost like, you know what, somebody that wanted to ban the animals has realized that we're starting to push education now in order to counter that, so they're going to go one level down and just see if they can ban educational programs altogether. Well, this is a problem. So something that we really need to stay on top of. And definitely, this kind of ties into, we're talking about breeders versus keepers and so forth. There's a lot of keepers out there who see a lot of breeders, and they see greed. That's not my personal view. I know some breeders that are just awesome folks. You know, they're working on their specific projects, and they're just, you know, they're doing that. They're supplying a reptile community, and they're doing so ethically. And like I said, I know some great breeders. But I think a lot of people, when you think reptile breeder, they think greed, they think puppy farms, they think I just want to go and cash in, you know, just want to play with all of these morphs until I get something really rare that I can sell for 20 grand a pop and stuff like that. And I'm sure those people are out there, you know. It's kind of a catch-22, you know. If you love animals and you want to, and this is a dilemma that I'm facing. I love animals. I would love to work with them 24/7, do it, you know, make it my job all the time. And the only thing is about the only way you can finance that is to either have a full-time job to pay for it, or get involved in breeding and sell the animals. You know, like I said, it's catch-22. We've got to have breeders to perpetuate the hobby, and we've really got to encourage our breeders to, again, even tenfold more than everybody else, really exemplify the values that we need to as a community. You know, responsible keeping. You know, if you're a breeder and you've got 200 baby reticulated pythons at home, before those things go out the door, you need to have 200 conversations about, this may not be the right animal for you, and I might not want to sell it to you. You know, all of the guys that I know and respect, they do that. They have those conversations. You're not going to be perfect. You're not, you know, things are going to happen. People are going to lie to you, but you've got to make a concerted effort. And I think breeders really need to go a step further and really work on putting out more educational stuff, because they've got a wealth of expertise. I mean, that's one thing I will readily admit. I am completely ignorant from most morphs. I never got into breeding. You know, before I get an animal, I learn what its genetics are, and I learn about that one. But to sit here and just rattle off what morph is what, I've never decided to contribute any intellectual real estate to that. I'm more interested in interacting with the animals. I mean, I don't care if snake's white, black, a tiger, you know, whatever it is. I enjoy the interaction with the animal regardless. Yeah, and some people are really into the genetics of them, which is, you know, completely cool. Just not my thing. But the breeders, you know, these guys are a wealth of information, and you know, it would serve them, it would serve both their businesses better, and the community better, you know, for them to go ahead and, you know, start putting the information out there, just kind of helping educating folks as much as you can. And I know a lot of them do. I know some guys that are really on point with that stuff. But you know, we shouldn't, as keepers, we shouldn't demonize breeders. There's a good analogy that I've used before, and that is, you've got a few people sitting around at the bar and you're talking, and this guy's talking about, well, I had this plumber over at my house, and man, he walked in, his shoes were covered in mud. You know, his name was Mike. He was just sloppy. He left stuff all over the place. He got glue all over my furniture, and the house was just a mess when he left, man. It was just, plumbers are such a pain in the ass. And the next day when you walk away from that conversation, you don't remember Mike was the one who made a mess. Plumbers is what you remember. You know, you remember, okay, plumbers are the ones that are messy and nasty and all that stuff, not this particular one. And it's the same thing when we're talking about reptile keepers and breeders and stuff like that. If you're going to go out and you're going to publicly slice and dice people and stuff like that, a layman sees that, you know, at the end of the conversation, they don't know who that breeder is or who the next one is. All they know, reptile people are bad. So, yeah. That's not to say that you should never call people out for doing, you know, bad things and stuff like that. There's always gray areas. There's always stuff to talk about. But within a community, we do need to try and keep everything just as positive as we can. There's a lot more people coming out now that are really pushing for naturalistic enclosures and everything bigger and better. And in a lot of cases, I think they're compensating for the guilt of having the animal in the first place by wanting to build them a, you know, metropolitan zoo style enclosure, which is great. More power to you. Not all of us can keep our animals outside in house-sized enclosures and things like that. That's the exception rather than a rule. You know, the idea behind it and everything, it's awesome. But we don't need to be cutting each other apart because we think, oh man, this guy's enclosure's a foot smaller than it should be. On the other side of that coin, you know, if you see somebody doing something that's blatantly harmful to the animal, you know, we do need to be able to call people out on it. So, you know, it's just one of those things where we've got to use some common sense on this stuff and make sure that we're keeping ourselves in a positive light, that we're approaching people in a positive way. And it's not some big kumbaya thing. It's all about maintaining our rights to keep these animals, because what we do as a community, it all is wide open for the public to see, and the public is the one that's going to be voting on the laws on whether we're going to be able to keep these guys or not. They're the ones that are going to, you know, they're either going to see a responsible community of animal keepers policing each other, keeping each other above board, or they're going to see a bunch of heathens with a bunch of dangerous animals, and they're not going to want anything to do with us. So it's all stuff to kind of keep in mind. I know I've kind of rattled on and on a little bit here, but all stuff to think about, guys. USARK can't do everything for us. You know, they have a job that they do, and they do it pretty well under the circumstances, I would say. But we've got our job to do too. You can't go down, get your USARK membership, and then do whatever the hell you want to and expect they're going to be able to fix it, because it's not always going to be the case. You know, yeah, get your USARK membership. Yeah, get your butt over there right now and get subscribed to their YouTube channel. You know, follow the alerts and all that other stuff. But it goes hand in hand with that you know, you've got to make sure that you're being a responsible keeper, that you're not putting out stuff that makes the community look bad, and you know, you're treating your animals well, and you're constantly trying to make yourself a better keeper. You know, if you're in a position to do so, you know, spend some time, put out some content to help somebody, you know, help somebody get more comfortable with their animals. You know, the more, like for me, I never hesitate to, you know, somebody will call and say, hey man, I'm having problems with my snake, it wants to kill me. Okay, let's start a video chat. Set the phone up and I'll watch and look at the snake's behavior and give you my 2 cents and maybe advise you on what maybe the best way to approach it is and stuff like that. I mean, the more time that you spend working with people like that to make them better handlers and keepers, the less incidents we're gonna have to begin with of people getting bit, people getting wrapped up, stuff like that. You know, this is all stuff that we need to help each other through. And, you know, doing that, if we all get on board and we find our happy medium, I really think that we'll be able to relax a little bit and start to establish ourselves as an accepted community, and we won't have quite so much difficulty fighting off some of these bad laws. So, yeah, kind of take it for what it's worth. I could sit here and rattle on and on all day, but I won't. There's a couple things that I wanted to get out today. So go from here, check out the USARK website, check out their YouTube channel, get subscribed to it, and let's really work to keep everything in as positive a light as we can, help bring each other up in this, and do what we can to secure our rights to keep these animals that are so important to so many of us. So you guys have an outstanding day, and we'll see you next time on Intrepid Exotics.